Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a roll call, please? We have two absent. We're going to go ahead and start with the presentation from the Human Services. This is Human Resources. This is a study and possible reorganization. So we'll open it up to Mr. Riedel. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and thank you for the opportunity to meet with you all tonight. For those of you who are leaving, thanks for all the good work you've done during the course of your term with us, and for those of you who are just coming on, welcome. You're in for a really great trip. It's a fun place to work. My name is Bob Riedel, and the reason we have gathered today is I am hoping that you will support the addition of 2 new human resources professionals to our team. The easiest answer to the question why is go west of 31 down to the I and see the remarkable economic growth that we have experienced here in Kenosha. It's contributed to so much. It is really an amazing thing. And it has given us many opportunities as citizens of Kenosha County. It also has given us a challenge as an employer in Kenosha County, however. We're in competition for quality employees. And it has changed the way my staff and I do business. It will change the way that you will think about the way we do business. And quite frankly, gone are the days where we could put an ad in the Kenosha News and get 300 applicants for a job with the Sheriff's Department. One of the first recruitments I participated in was exactly that. And we had to rent Tremper High School's cafeteria because it was the only place in the city big enough to entertain so many guests who were applying to become deputy sheriffs. Employees or employment opportunities in Kenosha County are at minimum abundant. We have changed our role. We are the recruiters. We have to be active in the community. We have to be creative. We need to convince candidates that Kenosha County is still the preferred employer in our area. And in fact, we have to be the preferred employer in Kenosha County because when new business comes, when Kenosha experiences growth, more roads need plowing, even in April. More businesses and people mean the need for law enforcement, more law enforcement. The sheriff has been public about what his needs are going to be in the future, considering the growth that we're experiencing and considering the growth we will experience. We will need more social services. We will need more healthcare professionals. Services that only the county can, and quite frankly, is obligated to provide. At this time, too, we are seeing a significant change in the profile of employees that we are recruiting. I've heard a lot about millennials, and much of what you hear is true. Our candidates are interested in more than just wages and benefits now. They ask questions about work-life balance, time off, flexible scheduling are all part of the job offer discussion. Is there upward mobility? Are there chances for advancement? Our candidates want a stronger activity, a stronger relationship with the leadership of Kenosha County. That's why we are all going through leadership training. We are learning how to relate to our employees on a unique and different level than we ever have before for the purpose of responding to them properly and keeping them here in a retention mode. It's far more personal relationship and far more demanding than our relationships were with our employees back in the days of the unions. So we've identified the shift. Employees are now different. They require more hands-on. And we continue to grow. With these changes, we have shifted the way that we operate in human resources. It used to be wages were negotiated. Now, wages are determined by surveying the market, by getting concrete data on private sector and public sector employers, and making sure that our similar jobs are being paid similarly to theirs. We've conducted 2 studies since 2014, one of which was pretty high profile. We had a couple of meetings like this to talk about our wages and making a huge transition to a market-based wage program. We'll need another this year. It won't be quite as comprehensive as the last one, but we've identified healthcare and other areas of concern so that we can study that and make sure we're still paying at a competitive level. You might also remember that the employee health benefit, the health insurance we offer our employees, was negotiated in the contract, even down to the point of how much our employees would pay in co-payments and deductibles. It's far more complicated now. We do an annual analysis of our health plan to make sure not just that we are competitive, but as important, that we are budget compatible with Kenosha County's overall budget. We have completely changed our recruitment system to a comprehensive human capital management system, and I'm going to let Mr. Foley explain what that is in his presentation. No pressure. Our creativity is regularly tested. Some of you who were on the Finance Committee recently heard about a strategy that we put in place using part-time employees to offset the cost of overtime that was being created by our new employees coming in and getting forced into taking overtime shifts when they occurred in the jail. We now have a team of part-time employees who fill those spots at regular wages, and we're saving a ton of money. It's because we got more creative, we have found a better way to recruit, and we have part-time employees who will be ready to take full-time jobs when those things occur. We also are involved in several other things that you may or may not know about. One of the questions that came up during the Finance Committee hearings were about our interactions with employees. We have a lot of interactions with employees. When they are on A&S, when they are in workers' comp, we meet with them regularly. We monitor their progress. We make sure they come back in time, though not too early. We also are responsible for risk management, for safety, for OSHA compliance, HIPAA compliance, and a variety of other responsibilities. During this process, we talk to our county departments and our department heads. Some of them are here today, and they all express the same thing. We need our HR department to be more proactive. Your reaction is good. Your proaction needs to improve. And the way we can do that is with more people. We no longer simply award jobs because you've been here a long time or because you are the most senior. Most of our jobs are full-blown recruitments, internal and external. In the past 14 months, our team of 5 has hired 403 employees and separated from 325. That's 135 hires for each of the 3 HR professionals currently on our staff, and that's a lot of work. In short, the demand of human resources has outgrown the division. And in a few short months, Foxconn will begin building, and we will compete for employees even more ardently. The growth and demand and upcoming changes that are coming in HR lead us to Mr. Brad Foley. Brad Foley is from HR Value Partners. He's the owner, and he has been our consultant in this process. We hired Brad to take a deep dive into the operation of the Human Resources Department. We needed to identify best practices. We need to know if we're using best practices. We need to identify the areas of improvement and then make recommendations on how to use our resources to the highest value that they can operate at. Before I give it over to Brad, I do want to respond. There has been a lot of talk about the model that we are presenting today. The model is important for you to know, because you need to know that we're serious about this, that this is a real problem, And the real resolution is hiring 2 new people. But we're not just going to hire 2 new people and send them out and say, find us some new corrections officers or hire some new nurses for the Brookside Care Center. We are putting them in a model that is tested in the private sector, that works, and that will get our maximum return for the investment we're asking you to make tonight in our department for new people. With that, I would like to introduce you to Brad Foley and invite him up. Good evening. So as Bob mentioned, my name is Brad Foley. I'm with HR Value Partners, and for about the last 8 months, I've been working with the county to evaluate the HR function. And I started that process by talking to everyone in the HR department and really getting a sense of how they interact with the county, how they're measuring themselves, how satisfied do they think their customers are, and how do they decide if their customers are satisfied. And I got a great picture of how the HR function works. And then I went out and spoke with over 20 of the leaders throughout the county and asked them the same questions. What do you need from the Human Resources Department? How satisfied are you? What are your needs going to be in the future? Where are we strong today and where are we weak for what you need tomorrow? And out of that came a great picture of the challenges that we're facing right now, the areas where we're doing well, and what we need to do to improve. And so I just want to walk you through some of that thought process, and I'll be happy to take your questions as we get there. You'll notice I have slides up here behind me, so hopefully you'll be able to see those. So we had to begin by looking at the current state of the HR function. And to do that, we had to go back to kind of the collective bargaining time pre-Act 10. And what we found is that pre-Act 10, we were staffed roughly to the level that we are today, and the requirements of the HR function were fairly basic. We had to negotiate contracts, we had to interpret those contracts, and we had to administer those contracts. There were a few things here and there that we had to do in addition to that, but this was the primary function of the HR department prior to Act 10. Then when Act 10 came, we realized that if these contracts are going away, we have to do something so that we know how we're going to interact, so that we know how we're going to deal with issues that come up, that have come up all along the way, that we've normally handled through contract. And so we created policies, procedures, work instructions, processes that basically, because of the time frame that we had, mirrored what was in the pre-Act 10 contracts. Now, there have been some minor adjustments to that along the way, but because there was no significant change to the policies and the way that we were administering HR, we saw no need to change the structure of the HR department. And so we didn't. And since then, we have been riding along in the same mode. But what's happening is that there are changes in society, there are changes in the workforce, and there are changes in the needs of the county. And as those changes come along, we're dealing with them on kind of an ad hoc basis. So Bob has already described to you why the HR department is consumed with the recruiting needs of the county and with the other needs that he's mentioned. But in my discussion with the leaders of the county, I found that there are additional needs, additional support that they need from the HR department, specifically in areas like performance management, change management, a retention strategy as we have the challenges that we're going to be facing in the future, orientation, recruiting. You get the picture. The HR function is being buried with requests and do not have the resources to respond to all of those requests in the way that the county leadership would like, and in the way that the HR function, frankly, would like to. So the feedback that we got from county leadership is, number one, HR gets high marks for their reaction, their response when they're called. So there's no question that when somebody calls the HR department, they'll pick up the phone, they take them seriously, they try to help them problem solve, but that only goes so far. So the request from county leadership is, how can we move the HR function from waiting for my call to giving me the answers that I need before I even know I have to ask those questions? How do we anticipate the retention challenges that we're going to have, and what do I need to do that I'm not thinking about right now to ensure that we retain our talent? So there were several areas that
improvement is needed in. One is attracting talent, being an employer of choice, maintaining that in some instances, consistent employee experience, onboarding and orientation, performance management, and staffing recommendations. How do we go after the new talent? Based on what's happening in the county, do you have models that can tell us what our staffing needs are going to be? Leadership recognized, unprompted, and in almost every case, that their expectations of the HR function right now, given the structure and the staffing that we have, are unreasonable. And that really, until there's change, we're not going to be able to accomplish what they're looking for. So Bob mentioned that I would outline the strategy that we're planning to implement. And so what I'm going to show you now is how we would deploy those 2 extra resources that are being requested. This is the future state model for the HR function, and I'm going to use my laser pointer if it'll work here. So it's a little bit fuzzy there. I see it's difficult to make that out. So what we have here are 5 areas of county government. So the rectangles and the circle are 5 areas of county government. We've labeled those as tiers. And the plan is to add the 2 resources that we're discussing by, first of all, redeploying the current assets that we have. So the folks that are currently in the HR function are part of this future state solution, and they would be redeployed as identified here. They would be responsible for a specific tier, and then we would bring in 2 additional generalists who would be responsible for the other 2 tiers. By decentralizing the HR function and moving the HR specialists from this office sitting right below us and actually locating them in the tiers that they are representing, we're going to ensure that we have on-site HR professionals ready to deal with the challenges as they arise in those departments. And they'll understand the challenges, they'll be able to proactively address the issues before they occur, rather than sitting here not knowing what's happening and waiting for the phone to ring. So each tier has unique challenges. We're recommending a matrix reporting structure. This is a way to ensure that the needs of each tier are actually given priority. So every HR generalist will have a solid line responsibility. They will report directly to the Director of Human Resources. But they will also have a strong dotted line responsibility to the leader in their tier. Those leaders have been identified, and they will provide some very specific feedback as far as the needs of that tier. And the generalist will be responsible for representing the needs of their tier to the county HR department. They will handle all aspects of HR for their tier, so you don't have to wonder who you're going to get when you pick up the phone. You know that your HR generalist is responsible for recruiting, onboarding and orientation, performance management, disciplinary action, etc. You know exactly who to go to when you have a need. So we're adding resources, decentralizing the support, and then one concern that came up through the process was, how do we make sure that these generalists, if they're embedded in their tiers, that they don't forget that they're part of a larger county government, and that we need to ensure consistency to the extent possible across the county. And so the way that we're planning to accomplish that is each of these generalists will have an area of specialty that they are responsible for county-wide. So you can see it on the model that those areas of specialty are strategy and compliance, which would reside with the HR director, and then among the generalists, they would be responsible for performance management and succession planning, recruiting and onboarding, compensation and benefits, loss prevention, and risk management. So their responsibility with regard to their specialty is to bring all of the generalists together across the county, representing the unique needs of their tier of the county, and put policies and procedures in place that will be consistent to the extent possible across the county, but will take into account the unique needs of each area across the county. And finally, in order to ensure that this system works, we need to continue to have strong administrative support. We have 2 strong administrators already on the team, and the plan is to utilize them. and have one of them responsible for recruiting administration, given the volume that Bob has mentioned and the challenges that we know are coming. It makes sense to have one person dedicated to administrative support for recruiting, and the other will have general administrative support responsibilities with regard to performance management, benefits, et cetera. So the result that we're shooting for, and that this model has been proven in private industry to demonstrate, is that you have an HR function that is integrated, it's customer-focused, it's proactive, and those are the primary objectives of this project. So I thank you very much, and we welcome your comments and questions.
Before we do, I'd like to invite Barna Bench. Barna is our budget director, and he has done all the financial work on this proposal and is prepared to present that to you.
Good evening, supervisors. As the county's budget director, I've been asked to give the county budget and finance perspective regarding this plan. Upon careful analysis, the budget and finance team conclude that the fiscal impact to the county regarding the cost of the addition of the 2 HR generalist positions is minimal. Using the most conservative approach, which assumes the hiring of both HR generalist positions in October of this year with family health insurance coverage and the hiring of a new HR director this May, the cost to the county for 2018 would be approximately $116,000. This also includes a brief succession training overlap with the new and existing HR director. The 2018 cost is proposed to be funded from the operating surplus funds from the year-end 2017 budgetary closeout and is in the carryover annual closeout resolution to be considered later this evening. Finance is estimating that the unassigned general fund balance will increase by a robust $1.2 million, which includes the 2018 projected cost of $116,000, this plan, bringing the total year-end unassigned general fund balance to $19.63 million, or 29.51% of general fund expenditures, which is a full 1% increase over the year-end 2016. By implementing a cost allocation method that transfers the cost of this proposed plan directly to various tiers, as Brad explained, the estimated net effect to the 2019 budget is less than $31,000. This is accomplished by maximizing revenue from grants and other funding sources within each tier. This supplemental revenue would not otherwise be made available if not for the direct cost allocation method approach. It should be noted that this methodology has been thoroughly vetted through continuous state and federal audits. The bond rating agencies will look favorably towards the implementation of this plan, as it shows that the county is committed to recruiting and retaining a AAA-rated workforce. This plan is a continuation to use the use of best practices similar to the class and compensation plan that was approved by this county board over the past few years. As you well know, this plan has stabilized the single largest segment of the county's budget, and it was also well received by the bond rating agencies, giving county fiscal and administrative management the highest ranking possible on their scale. To conclude, these two positions have the potential to have the most positive financial impact on the county's bottom line that I've reviewed in recent memory. The non-quantifiable cost savings to the county in the areas of recruitment, retention, loss prevention, and reduced health insurance and workers' comp claims alone stand to bring a significant impact on the county's ROI or return on investment. Thank you.
That concludes our report.
Thank you. I'll open it up to questions now. Supervisor Wambolt, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I thought it was very well done. Just a couple of questions for me. I'm still making up my mind on this, but I was wondering, in your process of investigating, did you check into making our current employees more efficient in any way? Is there ways to do that? Did you investigate that at all?
Yes, in fact, that's critical to whatever you do going forward. And one of the areas that we looked at was improving the recruiting process. We did a full recruiting process mapping exercise and identified opportunities to remove approximately 10 weeks out of the average time to hire. So, yeah, there are opportunities like that, and they were investigated.
Okay, thank you. And it was probably covered, but maybe you went through a little quickly. What would be the effect of waiting until 2019 versus doing something now?
Do you want to?
We're behind now, and we are, again, engaged in competition. We know that work on the Foxconn property is going to begin as soon as real spring comes, and we need to be prepared to go and compete with them for our employees. So every minute we wait, every day we wait, we get further and further behind in that. And I will state that whenever we have been presented with this kind of challenge, the thing I admire most about the current administration is we have always been first. We were the first to establish policy and procedures among my county colleagues and personnel when Act 10 happened. We were the first to conduct a comprehensive market-based wage and benefit analysis post-Act 10. And you guys are in on that. And all of the county board supervisors have supported these things historically along the way. Because I will be retiring and there will be a new leader, it's the perfect time to do that.
Thank you. No more.
Thank you, Supervisor Wamble. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just like to say that I think this is encouraging to take a look at a proactive approach to a situation that we know will only become more competitive as time goes along. I think it's really the proper way to do this. But I do have a question for Finance Director, if I could just get the timelines and make sure I understand properly here. You'd mentioned two potential hire dates. One was October of this year, is that correct?
That's correct. For the two HR generalists would be in October of this year.
Okay, so both in October. Was there some reference to May of?
That is the time period in which I used to calculate the cost for this year for the new HR director to be hired.
I see, okay. And so you're taking a look at a ramification of $116,000 for 2018, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then for 2019, are we looking at a total of 31K or just an additional 31K?
An additional 31,000.
Okay, in addition to what we're looking at in 2018?
Excuse me, 31,000 in addition to the 2018 budget, not including the 100.
Okay, that clarifies it. Yep. That's my question, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Hallman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What the administration is proposing to do sounds much like what I've heard in NACO. I know the last NACO conference I was at in DC, they talked about recruiting, particularly going into places where there were young people who maybe might be in some serious trouble to say, hey, wait a minute, we can redirect your path, but consider the county as being an employer, because you understand how life works in this fashion and why people might make the choices they do. You might make a fantastic social worker for the county in terms of communicating effectively and helping people. So what I'm hearing that we're doing is fantastic. But I do have one particular question, and it's probably tangentially related to this. I've been in this role now for a decade. When I started, I was 23. I'm 33. I've been the youngest member of this body since the day I showed up. Colloquially, I'm probably the millennial in residence. So I saw what you had laid out on the screen. This needs to be a separate bullet point. There needs to be a plan for it, and you need to deal with it. The issue of diversity and inclusion. You have a lot of Black and Latino people in college, among millennials. If your workplace doesn't have some kind of LGBT group or something, don't even expect to be considered, seriously. And I realize addressing that is larger than just what we do in this institution, that the community plays a role in facilitating that. I know KUSD has spoken extensively about their difficulty in terms of finding teachers of color, because there really isn't a middle class here of people of color. So teachers who would naturally be in that category say, who am I going to hang out with? And they say, well, there's no one, so then your community is officially off the table. So you start losing talent when you don't look at those things. So instead of lumping that in with other stuff, that literally needs to be a separate bullet point, and you honestly have got to deal with it. And I'll just close with this, and I'm not going to address how I feel about it emotionally, so I'll choose much nicer language. I know how I was received in every corner of this county when I started this job, and I know how I'm received now. Not much has changed. So I'm really, really hoping that what I have just said to you, you will take quite seriously, because this millennial will walk out the door if these things are not fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Holman.
Thank you, Supervisor Hellman. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
Thank you, and if the Budget Director could explain in a little more detail how the cost can be charged off of various grants.
The way it works is by taking 60% of the generalist time that they will be spending in their departments will be charged to those individual tiers. In addition to that, the 2 administrative positions will be charged countywide through those tiers using FTEs within those departments. By doing this, we're able to maximize revenues through grants in the health department, workforce development, and through the administration budget in human services. Through the public works tier or area of government, we can charge these costs through the state of Wisconsin DOT reimbursement. In addition to that, we can charge it through the public safety building maintenance, sharing costs with joint services and the Kenosha Police Department.
So that's how you get from the
294,000
down to 30,000.
Correct.
And would that be an annual thing as long as these grants are in existence?
Yes, it would continue forward, correct.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, Supervisor Rose?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I did attend the initial meeting of the committee and was prepared to support it. I had a commitment last Thursday, wasn't able to. My name is not signed, and I was absent, but I do support this 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Ron Frederick. Any other lights? Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm a little confused here on the Director of Human Resources cost here, because a couple of years ago it was $101,267, and now it's up to $107,385. And it looked like to me it was going up to 132, but then looking at your chart here for 2019, it says 182. So is it going to be approximately 132 or 182? I mean, I'm just...
The salary will increase with the new HR director, but that number also included benefits, including health insurance. So the actual increase for the human resources director will be a $32,000 increase. That includes salary and the additional costs of pension and FICA related to salaries.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No?
No.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also attended the Finance Administration review of this proposal, and at first I was uncertain whether or not I was in support of this reorganization. However, after listening to the presentation, asking a variety of questions, not only myself but other supervisors, and coming to the realization that we haven't reorganized or modernized our HR function in probably 20 some odd years, because exactly that the presentation was given, it was just contract negotiations. I have come to the conclusion that I would support this measure primarily because I was assured that there'll be metrics that will be reported on to not only the Finance Committee, but I would ask for the board as a whole when the appropriate amount of time is passed so that measurements can be made. Because if we can become more efficient and more proactive at our HR function, retention should go up and thus hiring and training should go down. That's a cost. In addition, I've worked for a variety of different private sector organizations. Some have had very good HR functions, and some have had very poor HR functions. And you remember those companies very vividly. One of the areas that was mentioned also was onboarding. Onboarding is critical to new employees so they can just understand how things function, where to go, what their network is, and it really does relate to, again, employee retention. So I worked for an organization that had a poor function, and it was one of the reasons that I moved on to another opportunity. So I just wanted to share those thoughts because I'm not keen in spending more money in an area that, in all reality, is overhead. But from the other perspective is, this is a critical function to help support and help manage the functions that are critical to the function of the county. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitzky. Supervisor Retzlaff, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I voted against this in the Finance Committee last Thursday, and my primary reason is I really think we should wait on this. I'm not against it, Bob and Matt. You did a great presentation. I see the necessity of it. I would like us to wait till we get a new human resource director. In my past life, I've dealt with hundreds of human resource personnel, and whenever there's a new one, they always come in with their own regimes, their own carriers, their own consultants. A lot of times I got kicked out of there because they brought in new people. I really would think this person, I hate to say this, he may not like them, the people that you're looking at. I don't know, they could be the best people on planet Earth. He or she may not think that. I would like to have that person have the opportunity to have a large input in this decision and put their 2 cents in totally as employee here, knowing our culture. I think, I don't know all the details of this person because I guess it's not known to us where that's at, but if this person has been interviewed and so forth, how open are they to say, you know what, I'm not for this, let me work here for a while and figure this out? That's just where I'm coming from. I do agree we eventually do need this. I have no problem with it, and financially it looks fine. But again, that's why I'm going to vote no, just because of the timing of having the new human resource director here to get involved. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzlaff. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
To tag along Supervisor Retzlaff's comments, I tend to agree with him. It states in here that we're going to be hiring a new director to overlap Mr. Riedel in May, so that's only less than a month away. Are we on schedule to hire a new director in May? Or is that, was that a plan?
It's not top secret. It depends upon how things go. Okay, we have, I will share that we have conducted interviews, and I can give an incomplete response to both of your questions, and that is that all of the candidates that were recruited to apply for this position understand where we're going with this model. And so it was explained to them by Mr. Foley, and further it was a part of a topic of conversation in the interviews we've conducted so far. So they do have some idea where we want to go. And as I said, that's an incomplete answer to your question, but they are aware of it.
Okay.
So in terms of the timeline, yes, it'd be great if we could hire somebody in May. As you know, we believe in succession planning, and to the extent that I can, I will help this person become acclimated to our culture and our area and all the good stuff that we have. And when he or she is ready to go, then that's when I'll leave.
Okay, thank you. And along the same lines, I also have a comment that, this is the last meeting of this board. It may be wise to wait till the new board is elected. It kind of seems like we're rushing through and pushing this through in the 11th hour.
on a different subject, it was brought up in the slide presentation about Act 10, that after Act 10, we move from collective bargaining to implementing our own policies, procedures, and processes. That was, Act 10 was 2011. Are we planning on reviewing, once we reorganize, reviewing our policy, procedures, and processes and see if there's improvements? I mean, because that's been 7 years, and I don't recall any major, reviews or anything like that.
Act 10, obviously you're right, it occurred in 2011. However, all of our contracts were still ongoing, and we had to let them run out. And so I think the last contract to run out was 14. It's just, I'm going on memory here, so apologize. We had 2 that ran out right away, and some of you were in those meetings on hot August nights in the committee room. I know Supervisor Rose was, when we talked about the policies and procedures and doing that. The HR staff reviews policies and procedures annually, and we make proposed changes to the county board in the budget hearings. And so they are considered in the budget hearings and passed in the budget annually. And so, yes, we do review on a regular basis. We are aware of some changes which could be made, and we will present them to you during the budget hearings in October.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in response to Supervisor Skalitsky and Supervisor Decker, as Supervisor Skalitsky said, is that me?
No.
Okay. As part of my motion to approve this on finance, I did set up them coming back with those matrix to have this, information brought back to us. So we were going to look at that through the course of this implementation as well. And to Supervisor Decker, we are going to, stay on top of this and watch how the changes are made. Also, there's been no changes for 20 years, and I think at some point, and they picked now to go out and do a study in this transition. And when we pay money for a study, that I think is something that we need to take that information back and take it to heart in our voting. Not that you always agree with everything, but we did a study to see how this could be the most effective that it can be. And these are the results that we came up. Quite frankly, they could implement this type of program without our approval. Okay, the thing is, it's the 2 people that they're looking for. And I can't sit here and say that with the changes in our society, in our area, with Foxconn, with Uline, with Amazon, with all the competition out there, I see this on joint services as well. I mean, we are competing for bodies. And I think with this whole study being done, I think it shows us and shines a spotlight on where we're going in the future. So we did, and another thing, the last hour, I could see how it looks like that, but we had this brought to us last budget time. And we said, well, wait till the study's done. So the study's done, and then they're bringing it back. So I don't think there's any, undue pressure at the last minute to try to push something through. I think they just brought it back when the study was done, and this actually started a few weeks ago, and then was tabled and moved forward that way. So I am in full support of this. I think based on where our region is and where it's going, I mean, we're totally willing to fix roads and get ready for stuff. We have to get ready for the people too. And for any of you who don't think that our employees are the backbone of the county, it's a very important thing. So they have my support on this, and I hope they'll have yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. Supervisor Rose, I'm going to skip over you and go to Supervisor Elverman first and do our first-time speakers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm certainly not in favor of waiting on anything here. All of the department heads are on board and in favor of this. The Sheriff's Department, Public Works, everywhere that these people will be embedded. It's not a new idea. It is the second time that I've heard it here, much more lengthy discussion the first time I went through all the numbers and proposals. But to wait, you've heard a little bit about it tonight, this administration, this county board has been a little bit more innovative than that, and been leaders in the state. If you are waiting to make decisions in this economy, you are going to fall further behind. We only have a couple new board members coming in here. I mean, why wait for a new board? That's a silly proposal. We have, in my small business, a fight for people. In my industry, it is a huge fight for people. And we're all in Kenosha County. I hear from the people that work for the highway department, the type of people that they're not all that pleased. They say they're adequate, but high-end people are very difficult. The competition is ridiculous. I used to put in an order at the job center when I was looking for workers in the spring, and I'd get 15, 20 calls. Once the veterans hold was over, you'd get a couple of those guys. I'd get 15 or 20. I got 2 this whole spring. I extended my order, and I got 2 phone calls, and one was from Walworth County that just stopped at the library by accident. So this is a real problem, and I'm talking about labor. My industry is labor. We're looking for such a wider variety of talent to work for Kenosha County, which is leading this whole uptick in the economy in Kenosha, Racine, Walworth County. So we have to be leaders at this. Waiting is something that other people do, and we haven't made too many mistakes in the last 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Alverman. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
Is this more of a private model or sector, or is this public sector? And Bob, since you've been the director, how many employees have we hired since you've been director? Additions to your department?
Oh, additions?
Yeah.
None.
And you've been director since?
When I was hired in 1998, we had 5 or so.
All right. And what about the public sector, private sector?
It is a private sector model that is...
Can you turn on your mic?
Good. It's a private sector, I'm sorry. It's a private sector model that is very successful in the private sector. I am not aware of any public employer using this model right now. Milwaukee may. I would have to find out more about that. It is a model which is probably most efficient for a large county like ours with the kind of needs that we have, but I'm not familiar with a lot of public sector use.
Thank you.
Brad, maybe Brad has something to add to that. All I have to add is that I agree that this is primarily a private sector model, but given the challenges mirror nicely the private sector examples of this model being applied, and I believe it will be very effective for you.
Anything else, Supervisor Rose?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Hallman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if this question is going to be beneficial for this body or not, but I'm going to try to ask it. The way that a person seeks, finds, and obtains a job has changed extensively. I hear there's an abundance of jobs. If you want to work in a factory, Kenosha County, or a warehouse, Kenosha County is the place that you want to be. If you don't want to do either of those things, it's a very tough road to walk on. So I'm curious to know, because if you're underneath the age of 40 or 35, the way that you look for and find a job is radically, radically different. I'll be honest, personally, I've been looking. I think I have a better shot being Secretary of State under Donald Trump, only if Supervisor Rose would agree to be my lawyer, than I do for anything else. So I'm curious to know from the professionals in the room, can you talk about recruitment and where you have seen success in terms of how that looks different, probably for the folks in this room who are a little bit older than me and seasoned in years, who maybe haven't necessarily looked in a while or who haven't necessarily looked for employees?
We've changed radically the way we look for employees over the past 3 or 4 years, you probably know, and I know you approved, the Dayforce Human Capital Management Plan that we now use in county government. We are far less the kind of traditional classified ad places, and we are going to Glassdoor, Indeed, Monster. All of the colleges have their own recruitment sites, and so for young people coming out of college, those have been very effective. The Department of Transportation, the nursing home has Leading Age. There are all kinds of professional organizations that have job sites that we make use of. I don't know, my staff is over there. We must have 40 of them that we can choose from for every individual recruitment. More importantly, or as importantly, is Joe Patenti, who is our Facebook guru, has really done a great job of getting our message out through the various Facebook pages that he has developed for county government. And we had a really good response. I talked to Joe, I think it was late last week, and he put in our jobs for summer help and got some remarkable number of hits. The paradigm shift in how we go to get to people, first of all, is centered upon us. It's not throw out an ad and people come. It is, we need to actively be out there. We need to pick the right websites. We need to respond in a timely fashion. We've got all kinds of new tricks up our sleeves. And I want to give credit to my colleagues Diane Lighting and Ashley Lutterman, who really are the brains and the energy behind the human capital management system and has made us as successful as we've been.
So then, in my own search for employment, then I have seen our ads and they are working. That's good. The only suggestion I would have is we may want to bump up the pay just a tad. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. There's a lot of lights that are still yellow here, so I'm going to clear it. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this? Seeing no other lights. Oh, Supervisor Rose.
I would move to adjourn and so we keep on schedule.
I have a first by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Kubicki. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. We'll take about a 10-minute recess, please.
Thank you.
Oh, we didn't need it now. We need that recess after.
I know, we'll take that one too.
Okay.